We are live. Here we go with the intro.
Green Show, originating live on blasttheradio.com. Ask your smart speaker to play Blast the Radio. Live video available on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. The number to call or text is 613-413-2217. And now, telling it like it is, here's Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And as usual, anything you wish to discuss. I would love it if some of you raised an issue, a topic that you think should be discussed, or as I've said before, if there's something that you think you would like me to research, if I can, I'd be glad to do it. I fairly often get leads from people. Sometimes they lead to something important. So love to hear from you. Love to hear from you on the show, of course. You can phone, John. Just give the number again, how they phone or text.
Happily. Yep, we're at 613-413-2217. In fact, somebody was just calling as we were getting on the air, though. Call us back, 613-413-2217. It's also set up for text. You can email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. You can listen on your smart speaker. Just ask it to play Blast the Radio. There's a podcast. Just go to blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Sponsor banners, everything you need right there.
Everything you need right here. Very true. Very true. So anything you want to talk about, folks? Are flights from India and Pakistan really halted? The announcement, if you examine the announcement made by Trudeau, you will see that it says direct flights from India and Pakistan banned for 30 days. But it begs the question, doesn't it? Okay, if you can't come directly from Delhi, how about flying from Delhi to Dubai? There's a 3-hour layover in Dubai, and you can fly Dubai to Pearson International Airport. As a matter of fact, if you take that route with a 3-hour layover, and apparently they have some nice restaurants in the Dubai airport, you can save about $400. So, is that still legal? My understanding is that it is. You can also, of course, fly from Delhi to Frankfurt. Some people do that, and then get a direct flight from Frankfurt over to Pearson International Airport. Is that still available? I suspect it is. So you may have some thoughts about that. Once again, here we go. Trudeau, how many times has Trudeau promised that the borders are closed? They're supposed to have been closed last, March? They were never closed, for goodness sake. Then he talked about the great quarantine system. It was all baloney. There's no quarantine system. There may be something, but I mean, the latest figures I had, about 76% of all people coming into the country, they somehow or other avoid the quarantine system. And as a consequence, we have all of these various mutations running rampant across the country that poor old Doug Ford's getting blamed for. You may have some thoughts about that. But I have to notice, talking about Doug Ford getting hell, one of the things he was really criticized for, and probably deserves some, is his plan that police would be able to stop you, make random stops to check to make sure that you were going, you're supposed to stay in your home, et cetera, et cetera. Had a lot of opposition. The media jumped all over him for that, and some people are demanding his resignation. But I see out in BC, they may not have what are called random stops, but they're going to have roadblocks, random roadblocks, which is the same thing, because they don't want people traveling even from one part of the province to the other. It's so bad in BC. And by the way, talking about banning flights, they say that they have banned direct flights from India and Pakistan, which I don't think is true. Direct flights, yeah. But nothing about flights coming in from Brazil. The big problem in BC, and by the way, BC, the last time I checked, is still part of Canada, right? Mm-hmm. Even though Doug Ford doesn't run it, BC is still part of this country. BC is being overrun with the so-called Brazilian mutation. How did they get the Brazilian mutation? Flights coming in from Brazil, landing at Vancouver International Airport with little, if any, screening. That's how. Who's responsible for making sure that those flights are stopped? But at the very least, there's a real quarantine system. Who's responsible? It's not Doug Ford. It's Justin Trudeau. So you may have some thoughts about that. But there's another question out there that I have never asked before, and some of you will think that I should not be asking this, but what the hell? I'm going to ask it anyway. Question is this. Have Justin Trudeau and Sophie split up or not? Are they living together as man and wife, or are they not? And perhaps an even more important question, is the Prime Minister's marital status any of our business? I'd love to hear from you on that. You may have some thoughts about that, whether it's any of our business. One of the reasons I ask that today, Justin and Sophie showed up together early this afternoon to get their vaccine shots. I think, as far as I can recall, I think this is the first time that we have seen the two of them together in several months. I could be wrong, but I don't recall having seen pictures of them or any indication whatsoever that they have been together at all in the past several months. So, you know what? Let's be honest here, okay? Let's stop pussyfooting around. Rumors, and I'm sure you've heard them, have been floating around for a long time that the couple split up several months ago. You haven't heard those rumors? Well, the rumors say that Justin is living alone in the so-called Rideau cottage. That's the one, of course, that he frequently steps out of to make brief appearances on television to assure us that all kinds of vaccines are rolling in. Rumor has it as well that Sophie and the children are living in a newly renovated or perhaps a completely new home that Trudeau built for them with taxpayers' money at Harrington Lake. These rumors have never been verified. They've been booted around for a long time. And as usual, the media has stayed away from this because the media, as we all know, for the most part, is very, very, very reluctant to say or do anything that would portray the Prime Minister in any kind of a negative light. So, what do you think? Maybe excuse me, pardon me. Maybe the media just thinks that it's none of our business, and maybe the media is right on that. Maybe it isn't any of our business. What do you think? But one of the concerns I have is this. If, in fact, Sophie and the children are living at Harrington Lake, is it true that we taxpayers have been stuck with a multi-million-dollar bill to either renovate or perhaps even build a brand new home at the lake for Sophie and the children? There's certainly no question that a good deal of money has been spent at Harrington Lake. Maybe some of it is legitimate. I don't know. The media has never really examined this. One of these stories that I have, in fact, we've seen pictures, is that not only did he renovate the existing building, but build a brand new home for Sophie and the children. And obviously, this would be at taxpayers' expense. We own it. But if in fact taxpayers' money has gone into this, then I believe that we taxpayers have a right to know that. So that, in at least that aspect, legitimizes the question. Have they split up? Are they living together? Are they back together now? Were they ever apart? Who knows? And then, of course, I think there is also a valid question as to mental health. I think that people, voters, residents, have a right to know if our Prime Minister, or for that matter, I think anybody who is making laws for us, I think we have a right to know if they may be being distracted by a marital breakup. I mean, we all know that marital breakups can be very, very disruptive. The effects on some people can be lasting and can affect decision making. In fact, one of the things that any psychiatrist or anybody with a brain will tell you, please don't make any, immediately after you split up with your wife or your husband, please don't make any major decisions. You're in no shape to make a major decision. So I from that point of view, and I could be wrong, I would really like hearing from you if you think this is any of the public's business. Now, there's one other thing in this regard that really bothers me, okay? It's been nagging away at what's left of my brain up here. A couple of days ago, maybe 3 days, Charlie Angus, and I talked about this, leading member of the NDP caucus, probably the strongest member they've got, raised the issue of Rob Ford's addiction while criticizing Doug Ford, the inference being that the entire Ford family was tainted with drugs. That was very clearly it was a terrible low blow. And I talked about this yesterday. But there was very little media concern. I think Mark Bonikowski in his column in The Sun was the only person that pointed out what a low blow this is. So apparently for the rest of the media, it's quite acceptable for a leading politician to try and portray Doug Ford in the same picture, I guess, as his long dead brother, a drug family. That's really, and by the way, Charlie Angus is not alone. There are members of the media, and I've seen columns in this regard and comments, including comments on Facebook from other people, drawing the same sort of parallel that, well, it's a drug-ridden family. So it seems to me that if, 5 years after his death, you can portray the Premier of Ontario in the same vein as his drug-addicted brother, if that's fair game and the media doesn't seem to mind, then I think the marital status of the Prime Minister may be fair game as well. But as I said, you may have different views, and I'd love to hear them. I could be wrong. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this, but the rumors are out there. I hope, if they did split, I hope they're back together. Marital breakups are very, very difficult, particularly for the children, okay? So, but I think that if, in fact, we've spent millions of dollars providing a new home for Sophie and the children, I think we have a right to know. How about you? Yes, John, we've got some comments coming in here, please.
You briefly touched on this a while back, and I remember it was quite contentious and people telling us that we had no business asking such things of the Prime Minister, etc. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see where people's heads are at now, because it's a little bit down the road. And I've certainly heard those rumors ever since they came back from that trip to the UK where she contracted COVID. So here's what's being said so far. Anne says, don't really care about the Trudeau marriage other than how much extra it is or is not costing the taxpayers. Glenn says, are they entitled to 2 residences or 1? If they're not together, get the hell out of one of the houses. Peter says, Justin and Sophie were to get shots today at noon. For a long time, many people have said they've not lived together since she came back from the UK after testing positive for COVID. The excuse why she went to the cottage. Or he went to the cottage, pardon me. There's 2 different cottages. This is confusing. When Pierre Poilievre, the MP, asked him where his wife stayed in England, he ducked and dodged the question 3 times. Some rumors suggest she stayed with a friend. Anthony says, what was noticeable was the image that he took her hand while being jabbed today. When it was her turn, he gave her his hand and she slapped it away. Telltale signs. Nina says, I heard a rumor that Sophie was staying with him until after the election. Then she planned to file for divorce. And David says, if the media was doing its job, we'd know the truth about Trudeau already.
So the question, there's more rumors being floated here. That's fine. But I think that the question is, and a couple of people have addressed this, is it any of our business? Am I making a mistake in even raising this issue? One of the things that I have to point out is that the American media was not shy to point out the many extramarital affairs that JFK, John F. Kennedy, had, including the one, apparently, in a clothes closet with Marilyn Monroe. It certainly didn't harm Kennedy's reputation, but the media, I believe the media in the United States, to be honest with you, I think certainly in those days it was much more honest than anything that, for the most part, that we see here. You may have some different views on that as well. But I guess the question is, okay, is this fair comment? And if the media thinks there's nothing wrong with Charlie Angus or anybody else drawing a parallel between a drug-addicted Rob Ford, who's been dead for 5 years, and his brother, the Premier of Ontario, if you think that you can sort of paint them in the same portrait and the media doesn't mind, is it not fair then to ask the marital status of the Prime Minister? That's what keeps nagging away at me. What's fair for the goose, fair for the gander. Remember that expression? Yes, John, you've got some more comments coming.
Yeah, and we'd love your calls as well. 613-413-2217. Heather Hickey says, Why are people discussing their marriage? Of all the things that stupid sock-wearing nitwit does in his job, his personal life is none of our business. She is not an elected official. She's his wife and does figurehead charity crap. I don't take joy in problems in anyone's marriage, but the fact is nobody knows if any of this is even true. So pick on his policies because there's plenty there, and leave his family and personal life out of it.
Okay. But as I say, I think the question as to did we finance the construction of a brand new house to accommodate a marital breakup? I think if taxpayers funded that, I think that is a legitimate question. It's never really been answered. We do know that a good deal of money was spent in Harrington Lake. Whether it was to accommodate, as I say, a marital split up, we don't know. But I think that the media, the taxpayers, we have a right to know at least that. Yes, John, more comments.
We do. We've also got a call coming in. Let's go to the call, shall we?
Yes, please.
All right, here we go.
Who have we got?
I don't know. Going to the phone call blind. Hi, it's the Lowell Green Show. Who's this, please?
Hi, it's Tim.
Tim, you're on live with Lowell Green. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, hi, Lowell. So just listening along here, and I think you're bang on for us knowing about perhaps the location of where is Sophie living? Is she living? Don't need to know her exact whereabouts, but are they living apart or living together? Maybe they're living apart for security reasons or for other reasons. Maybe the kid's schooling. I'm not sure the state of their marriage. I don't know if that's necessarily our business, but for the fact that we have to, as taxpayers, pay for separate location, then yes, I think that should be disclosed to us.
But in order to find out, I mean, very clearly, the marital situation has great relevancy to where is Sophie living, and did we pay for another house? That I think is very. I think that's a legitimate question. I understand. I'm reluctant, and I've never raised the personal issue before. But I mean, he is the prime minister. In my opinion, one of the things that really bothers me, and I'd like your opinion on this, is I think that some of the decisions that he's making are totally irrational. Not just bad, but total irrational decisions. For example, his statement that he wouldn't do anything different in the ordering of vaccines. I mean, that is irrational. That statement makes no sense whatsoever. And I just wonder,
that's totally irrational.
Is something affecting this guy's decision making, or is he just an idiot? I don't know. But I mean, that kind of decision, it's terrible. Thank you for the call. Good. Thank you, Tim. It's an interesting call. Thank you. Shield. Good folks up there in Pakenham. Well, I mean, Pakenham's not that far away. And you can still, you're supposed to stay at home. So if you want to stay at home, you need a new appliance, you need a new piece of furniture, then the easiest way, simplest way, the cheapest way in all probability, go to Shields, SCHEELS.ca. There you will see a total listing, for example, of all of the appliances, including pictures, prices, descriptions, and the money you will save. Shields right now has a major sale. Don't forget, I keep telling you that cost of operating in Pakenham is a little bit lower than it would be in a major mall here, okay? So there's a really good sale right now. Not only that, but I still keep hearing people saying, I just ordered this, whatever it is, from the big box store. I have to wait a month or 2 months for it. No, not at Shield. They'll probably be able to deliver whatever you want within a day or two, maybe 3 at the most. Shields.ca. Folks, check them out. You'll be very, very pleasantly surprised. Yes, John.
Cindy chimes in. She says, it's not irrational, it's incompetence. Nina says, when Pierre and Margaret were having problems, it was in the news regularly. Heather follows up on her comment from earlier. She says, I do agree on the construction topic. An answer needs to be put forward there. Eric says it affects his decision-making. Kim says if Trudeau is hiding his marital status, it makes him a security risk to keep it quiet. Eric also says, of course it's our business. The mental stability of our leader is definitely our business. And Peter says, no one's allowed to ask Trudeau unless it's all positive. I want to know everything that Trudeau does that costs taxpayers money. If Conservative PMs in the past spent any money, The press was all over it.
Yeah, that's that is very true. I mean, as I say, if Doug Ford is fair game for a long dead drug addicted brother, if the media think that's just fine and dandy, why can't I ask about the marital status of the prime minister? I'm having a little difficulty with this. I'm going to tell you right now that the marital status of Doug Ford would not be any secret. If Doug Ford and his wife were splitting up or having difficulty, you don't think that would be headlines in the Toronto Star? Come on, come on. Of course, it would be blazing right across that even his wife hates him. Those would be the kind of headlines. I know I keep pointing out the bias that's in the media, but I'm just wondering if this isn't more evidence of it. Yes, John, back to you, sir.
Leslie asks, why would he answer this question? He answers no to others.
He's working hard.
Craig says the Canadian press was all over Trump's marriage for at least the first year of Trump's presidency. Melania spent the first year living in New York while their son finished school. Yep.
Very true. Very true. Talking about Doug Ford, the criticism continues to pour in, okay? We've got the pandemic running roughshod over all of Canada, not just that Doug Ford's the premier of. And we still only have a tiny dribble of vaccines, and it's being cut back. The airports still remain open to only knows what kind of pandemic infections are pouring in here. Continue, okay? But somehow or other, this is all Doug Ford's problem. He's the bad guy because essentially the two things that he did that created most of the opposition was he closed playgrounds, and he announced that there would be random stops by police. Mistakes in both cases, and which he admitted and apologized for. But I don't think any of those mistakes cost lives. Failing to order sufficient vaccines early enough has cost thousands of lives. I mean, we have about 25,000 deaths from COVID so far. God knows, probably in the end, we're looking at about 40,000 deaths, which, by the way, is the total number of, there were about 40,000 people, Canadians killed in the Second World War in 4 or 5 years of fighting. There will be close to 40,000 people killed in about a year and a half with COVID. I'm not blaming it all on Trudeau, of course, but there's no question, and everybody knows this, had we had a good supply of vaccines like many other countries early, the number of deaths would certainly be reduced. That's not Doug Ford's problem. So when we're thinking about who's responsible, I want you to think of two numbers, okay? We keep hearing about this new rollout. And now I see there's a big story. Oh, there's going to be a 3 million or 30 million more vaccines coming. And when you look at it, really, they're coming maybe next year, the year after that, and the year after that. But what's coming tomorrow? Well, I don't think anything's coming tomorrow, at least very little. Trudeau promised us an ocean of vaccines. What we've got really is the Carp Creek, right? A dribble, tiny dribble. But I want you to think of two numbers. If you ever think that this is all Doug Ford's problem, think of two numbers. The numbers are 70 and 97. Ask me what those are, John.
Lowell, what are those numbers?
70 and 97. Folks,
okay.
70% of Canadians today, 5 months almost into this, 70% of Canadians have not received one single dose of vaccine. Oh, you keep hearing about the big rollout. Well, they say, yeah, 30% of us have now been vaccinated, at least one vaccination. Well, if 30% have been vaccinated, that means 70% of us haven't received a single shot. This is the 5th month. Now you say the other number you give, 97. What's that? 97% of us have not had the second shot. Slightly less than 3% of Canadians are fully vaccinated. 97% of all Canadians are not fully vaccinated almost 5 months into this. See, it depends on how you present it, doesn't it? What we hear from the Liberals and mostly the media is the big rollout, okay? They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. Every week we hear the same thing. They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. Well, now excuse me, first vaccines arrived on December 14th. It's not quite 5, but we're into the 5th month. Into the 5th month, and 70% of us still don't have a single dose. It's slightly less now that Trudeau and Sophie has received theirs. 97% of us are not fully vaccinated. And in fact, we won't have 100% full vaccination probably for more than a year. Meantime, I just want to point out that in the United States, they're close to 50% of the population now fully vaccinated. In the UK, about 35% fully vaccinated. Israel, about 80% fully vaccinated. And not just those countries we've been talking about. Chile now is over 30% fully vaccinated. Uruguay, about 30%. I could go on. These countries, most of you have never heard of. Serbia, 20%. We're 3% fully vaccinated. 97% of all Canadians are not fully vaccinated. 70% don't even have one shot. Yes, John.
See, Anthony says, that's the first vaccine for the original strain. What about these other variants or strains coming in? Mike says he stood up in Parliament a couple of days ago and claimed 25% of Canadians were vaccinated. Yeah, but only one shot, right? Nina says most of the people calling for Doug's resignation are Liberal lovers, tainting the wisdom of undecided voters. We have Ann saying the media would have us think that Ontario is the only province fighting COVID. Joshua says, everyone questioned Trump's mental health. Why can't we for Trudeau? I wonder how he would be perceived if he weren't a Trudeau. Bunny suggests they want to keep everything quiet if a breakup, as he would have to repay all her and her kids' added security. Eileen says, you're darn right we need to know if we're paying for them living separately and we are paying for this. Look what they did to Doug Ford and his brother. Every chance they get to condemn Ford, it's in the media. The media is a big part of this.
Let me give you a personal story here concerning Pierre, Justin's father. And it's also an illustration of how the media has changed, okay? As you know, there was Trudeau-mania at first. The media just loved him. And then the media began to change. They haven't changed with Justin as yet. You may recall that Margaret, who would be Justin's mother, was having some mental problems. And for a while, she was in a hospital in Montreal being treated for some kind of mental problem. The media was so persistent, and I believe low down on that they actually went into the hospital where Margaret Trudeau was and followed her around and ran stories about the kind of treatment. It dragged her through the mud. It's a fact. It's a fact. I went on the air and was so critical that Pierre Trudeau called me and he thanked me. And as a matter of fact, I still have a letter from him thanking me. So I'm not mentioning this to point out, the praise I got from a former prime minister. But the fact is that the media had no problem at that point following somebody around who had mental problems. Vastly different today. But maybe we shouldn't be dealing with this. I don't know. Kevin is on the air. Go ahead, please, Kevin.
Yes, hello.
Yes, sir.
A couple of things. I agree with the fact that it's been an abysmal failure with respect to vaccines getting out. A couple of things really concern me. One of them yesterday came to my attention that there, on the other end, in India, for example, right now, what they do is there's a lot of forgeries with respect to these the certificates you get to say that you're COVID-free. And just in the Hindu Times is where the story is. And they were saying how you can buy them $20, basically, is what it boils down to. They're using them widely over there for everything from getting out of writing exams where they want to be COVID positive to getting on planes where they want to be COVID negative. And that's the first part of this. The second part, I was listening to Rob this morning, and he was mentioning he had somebody call in who works for an airline and saying that all the flights from India that were booked to come in today, they're all rerouted already. He didn't want to name the company he works for, but he's Canadian. He's calling from here, and he's saying that, is that ethical? Yes, his manager. And his manager said, it's legal. So they've already been rebooked, and they're going to be coming in from another third country. It's just, and the government knows this.
So what you're saying, this is news to me. So, even today, you can book a flight from Delhi to Dubai, and then from Dubai to Canada. And as a matter of fact, it's about $300 or $400 cheaper. So you're saying now you can book a flight or what they're saying, you can book this flight in Delhi and stay on the airplane, but it will land in Dubai or maybe Frankfurt, and then fly in from Frankfurt, and it's allowed. Is that what he was saying?
Yeah, exactly. There are 3 main countries they do it from.
And the government knows this. The government knows this.
government knows this. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing which would solve this problem that they've been calling for the longest time is the people, the airline staff, the people working on the plane, they want to have COVID tests done right on the spot, like the quick test, just to rule people out so it's not 3 days prior. That way, I think it would be a lot harder for them to get these, fake documents that way.
Let me suggest something. I think the time has come, to be honest with you. It is so desperate in this country. I mean, we're talking about, doctors having to decide who lives and dies. That's how bad and jammed the hospitals are. I think the time has come when the airport should be shut down for international flights. I think it's time that, Doug Ford was criticized for not being tough enough. Then he was criticized being too tough. Well, it seems to me all of these mutations are flying in here. They're landing at our airports. What do you think, Kevin? I think it's time to stop it.
I agree, and a lot of doctors that I've been listening to over the past little while are concerned that with the variants coming in, we're going to be filling up our ICUs in no time.
They are. They are filled up. Right now, I was just reading this morning that in Ottawa, I think there are 34 ICU beds taken up here in Ottawa by patients from the Toronto area. Toronto hospitals are absolutely jammed. They're flying people as far away as North Bay, Sudbury, etc., and bringing them into Ottawa here. That's how desperate it is. Meantime, we still have flights coming in, as you point out, from COVID-ridden countries like Brazil, India, and Pakistan, sir. Thank you for the call. We're way over time. Thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate that call. It's a good call. Centennial Glass, talking about good. These are good people at Centennial Glass. They know their stuff. They're highly professional. They're a local company. Always been locals, not a big box stores. Their workmanship is second rate to none. They do a lot of business with restaurants, major commercial customers, restaurants, hotels, etc., etc. But they really pride themselves on their work for the ordinary homeowner, whether it's windows, doors, patios, screens, repairs, whatever it is. Beautiful framed mirrors at Centennial Glass, glass showers, and custom-made glass furniture. CentennialGlass.ca. Folks, have a good weekend. Thank you all. Some very good comments today. I really appreciate it. Don't forget, tell your neighbors and your friends what's available here. We'll be back. Thank you.
Lowell Green, live on blasttheradio.com. Show info and links at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Subscribe to the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and more. Or ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. Join us live weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on blasttheradio.com.